Welcome back to Highway Farty. It is a great day to rob a bank. Oh, don't shit, loose lip sync ships. Quiet, quiet, quiet. We'll have 100 St. Louis cops on me in 10 minutes. Guns drawn. That'd never happen, right? In 10 minutes? Today? Are you kidding me? Well, there was a time it did happen. April 24th, 1953 to be exact. And that is what we are looking at today, that day in history. The robbery of the Southwest Bank, corner of Southwest and Kings Highway. And here, let me get this thing off here. This crazy thing. This relic from COVID. Put this thing in mothballs. You ever smelled mothballs? You have? How in the world did you get their little legs apart? Folks, I'll be here all week, the Holiday Inn in Xenia, Ohio. Be sure you tip your server. My name is Don, by the way, and what I am doing with these videos is I am using my bizarre interest in where things happen, putting it to good use, and I'm going around town showing you where things happen in and around St. Louis, the things we drive by every day without even realizing history happened here. And the story I am focusing on today, and have been for the past few episodes, is the Great Southwest Bank Robbery. Going to the locations of that famous crime, and also the movie that was made based on the famous crime. And there is no location more associated with Southwest Bank, the bank robbery, than the building itself. This is, in fact, the Southwest Bank building. And let's go take a look at it. It sits right on the corner of Southwest and Kings Highway. And most of the building is still, well, I'm not going to say most of it, but a good part of the building is still here. And I want to point out some features of the building. First of all, in the photographs taken that day of the bank robbery, you will notice that there was a great big sign on top of Southwest Bank that said Southwest Bank. Today that sign is gone, and what you see up on top of the bank is that bank clock, which doesn't work, and the Golden Eagle, which has been associated with Southwest Bank since 1920. Now, some reporting I saw on it said that the Golden Eagle had flown above the bank since 1920. I cannot find a photograph from that era that would show that. I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying that I cannot verify that that eagle has flown above the bank since 1920. Nevertheless, it is a neighborhood landmark. People got used to seeing the Southwest Bank Eagle. And some years ago, when BMO bought this bank, Southwest Bank, they kept the eagle. BMO, by the way, stands for Bank of Montreal. Now this corner entrance here, you see this corner entrance? This used to be a door. They've made a window out of it. This is going to factor into our crime story in a very, very big, big way. Just kind of give you an idea though. This is a beautiful building, or what's left of it. See that great ceramic, that glazed brickwork there? And if you compare pictures of what this looked like in 1953 at the time of the crime, it still looks amazingly like that. It is still a bank. That's kind of cool too. Now here's one thing I want to point out to you though. As I said, BMO bought Southwest Bank more than a decade ago, and like what has been happening with banks all over, they wanted a smaller footprint for a bank. So what they did is they lopped off the back part of the bank. This would have all been, this whole stretch here was Southwest Bank. They basically gutted it and redeveloped this place as a, well, as a Walgreens. And as we move forward, I'm going to admit to you, I am not a fan of Walgreens at all. I don't like what they do to neighborhoods when they go in. But in this case, I will concede a point to Walgreens in that they at least agreed to situate their store as it is situated now, kind of in the back, behind what is left of the facade of Southwest Bank. So this was the original facade of Southwest Bank, and all these windows were original. What they did is they just took the whole middle and back part of the bank off and put the Walgreens in back here. So when you're driving by on Kings Highway, if you're not looking too closely, it does kind of look the same. And it achieves the purpose of obscuring that nasty Walgreens behind it. Let's look at these architectural features on this bank building. So let's talk about the robbery itself. As we saw in the last episode, the 4 conspirators in this crime met every day in Tower Grove Park for close to 2 weeks leading up to the robbery day. They were planning in excruciating detail how this thing was going to go down. The leader of the gang was a guy named Fred Bowerman. He was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list as an accomplished bank robber with a violent tendency. Bowerman was in charge of the whole thing, and he thought things through to minute detail. Well, to understand why Southwest Bank, first have to come to downtown St. Louis, because that's where Bowerman first came. Remember, he had $53,000 burning a hole in his pocket. It was filthy, dirty money. He'd robbed that bank in South Bend, Indiana, came away with $53K, and he takes $5,000. And he buys himself a brand new car, a 1952 Hudson Hornet. I'm a bit of a car guy, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. $5,000 for a brand new car in 1952 was an awful lot of money. But the Hudson Hornet was a special car. This is the car that he bought. And you'll notice the sleek aerodynamic design, the way the car was built, was unlike most other cars at the time. In fact, the Hudson Hornet was so special, it plays a crucial role in the early days of the sport of NASCAR. That was the winning car when NASCAR first started. Those winning races were all won with Hudson Hornets. So it would have been a special car, and that's why Bowerman, flush with cash, spares no expense buying himself a brand new car. But that still means he's got an awful lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars of money that would be easily traceable in Chicago if they ran the serial numbers on hot sheets. So he comes to the next nearest city. Now, of course, you can't just go to a bank here in St. Louis, because they would be suspicious if somebody walks in with $45,000 wanting to deposit it in cash. So he does the next best thing. Comes to downtown St. Louis. Just kind of give you a frame of reference as to where we are. That's the old post office building. And this over here, old-time Cardinal fans will recognize this place, not the restaurant. You see Gyro or Hero. I don't know, not call it the Gyro. The Gyro Hero Express. That was Hamilton Jewelers, your downtown watch shop with Dorian Magowitz. Used to host the Star of the Game show on KMOX radio after the Cardinal ball games. And the guests on the show always got a gift certificate for Hamilton Jewelers. Well, that was Hamilton Jewelers. And this was Mutual Bank and Trust at that time. You still see the eagle up on top of the building. And this is where he came to deposit his filthy, dirty money in safe deposit boxes. He gets a safe deposit box here, takes 20 grand of it and puts it in this bank. And then, I have to cross the street here. with his money safe in what was then called Mutual Bank. He goes right across the street to Mercantile Bank. Does the same thing. So he divides his money up between the two banks and safe deposit boxes. And you can still see the M above the entrance here for Mercantile. So now Bowerman's money is safe in St. Louis, and he makes several trips here. In the fall of '52, the winter of '52, and early spring of '53. He drives that Hudson Hornet down to St. Louis a number of times to get to his money. And each time he's down here in St. Louis, he's doing what good bank robbers do. He is surveying the scene down here. He's observing which banks are ripe for the picking. And the reason he picked Southwest and not one of these, here. Uh-oh. Got me off track again. That is a building scar that you see there. A building scar is when the old signage comes off the building, but you can still see what the sign said. And as you can see, it says Mercantile Trust Company, or Mercantile Trust Company. So I'm glad we saw that. So yeah, I'm getting off track again. But he doesn't want to rob one of these banks. Of course, he doesn't want to rob the bank where he's got his money in the safe deposit box and not recognize him, but he doesn't want to rob a downtown bank. Simply because downtown, and especially back then, it's not nearly as crowded today, but downtown, you're choked with all this cross-street traffic. And there's no easy access to the freeway. I don't know, they didn't have freeways then, but there's no easy access to the expressway leading out of town. Once you are downtown here, you are stuck in this maze. By the way, that building in the distance, the big tall one, the white one, that's the old famous bar department store. This would have been an especially busy section of town in 1953. And he didn't want to get stuck down here. That's why he starts setting his sights elsewhere. And he decides at that point, I need to go back out to a bank that I saw on one of my trips, Southwest Bank. And that's where we are going to head back to. So this gives you a better look at this 5 Points intersection that Bowerman would have loved so much for its easy access to the expressway out of town, back then called the Red Feather. It was Highway Farty, but they called it the Red Feather. I have a whole episode planned on the Red Feather at a future date, but just know that it was called the Red Feather back then. That's how people referred to it. And Bowerman wanted to get out of this bank quickly and get to the Red Feather. As his getaway car driver, he hires a young guy from Chicago, from the neighborhood. Doesn't really know the guy, but he knows of him. His name is Glenn Chernick, and Chernick had been a football star in the area and then went on to play college football at Marquette University. Gets kicked off the football team for stealing and decides he's going to embrace a life of crime with full fury, and he does. So he's on this job as a getaway car driver. And one of the first things we see in the movie is Chernick, being played by the actor Steve McQueen, on the parking lot of the Southtown famous bar department store, which was at Kings Highway and Chippewa. It's really some of the best location photography in the movie because of what you can see going on in the background. And what he's doing here is stealing a license plate to put on the getaway car. Now, in real life, that didn't happen. In real life, what happens is as they're on their way down to St. Louis from Chicago, they stop off in Quincy, Illinois, and they steal the license plate that will be put on the getaway car, at least the first getaway car. There's more than one getaway car in this, and it does get kind of confusing. The getaway cars get confusing. Okay, now I'm going to show you exactly where that scene was shot. in South St. Louis. The Famous Bar department store that you see in it, the Southtown Famous, was located here in what is today a big strip mall right at the corner of Kings Highway and Chippewa. That Famous Bar department store was huge. This is a Walgreens. There is a Walgreens there today. And you will be hearing me say that an awful lot as we move forward in these stories, because unfortunately, wherever there is a historic building, or wherever there was a historic building, it seems that Walgreens has taken over. But in the movie, just over Steve McQueen's shoulder, you do see this strip of buildings that still exist today. It's actually, you see more towards the Chippewa side of it's where you see them. And in the background, over his shoulder when he's stealing the license plate, you can see a Kriegshauser funeral home. I'm going to show you that building. Don't I get a button to push? Huh. All right. There went a red light runner. Bravo, bravo, run that red light. Blow that horn. I think I got the walk sign here. Do I risk it? Long way to walk for a funeral home. Better to go into the funeral home walking, though, than the other option. And here would have been the funeral home, the Kriegshauser funeral home that you see over his shoulder while he's stealing the license plates. It's a neat building with a terracotta tile roof. I don't know what this building is today. It is no longer a funeral home. It appears to be, oh, it's a church. Okay, it's a church. Now, directly across the street from the funeral home, in that vacant lot you see there, that was the old Avalon Theater, Avalon Cinema. I think I mentioned I have a fascination with old signs. I did a sign blog one time. I don't know whatever happened to it. I lost my login information, but the title of the blog was "This Town Needs an Enema." And I used this picture I took of the old Avalon Cinema. It has been torn down, obviously. My mother took me here to see the Apple Dumpling Gang when I was a little kid. Now, in the Great St. Louis Bank robbery, most of the location shots were pretty much limited to this stretch of South Kings Highway between Chippewa and Southwest/Vandeventer. They did vary a little bit, but for the most part, everything you see in the movie was shot along this stretch, or in the residential sections adjoining this stretch. Not very many Jack in the Box restaurants left these days. All right, let's turn back the hands of time to April 24th, 1953. It is a beautiful spring day here in St. Louis. And there are some players in this Southwest Bank drama that I need to introduce and explain a little bit. Out in front of the bank that morning, across the street, there was a woman named Myrtle. Myrtle was taking collections for the Salvation Army, and she was standing out in front of the bank. She is going to play a big, big part in this and potentially saving some lives. So just keep Myrtle in the back of your mind for a moment. Also that day, inside the bank, something that Bowerman had not factored into his calculus about this crime, was a telephone repairman by the name of Joe Bauer. Bauer was working in a back room. So keep all of those people in the back of your mind. In the back of your mind as we talk about the crime, as the crime unfolds. Now, also that day, as luck would have it, there were two St. Louis police officers who just happened to be sitting in their car nearby. They were on duty. They were just sitting in their squad car very near the bank. So to show you where they were, I do have to change locations. Guess I should have mentioned on that bank sign, the one with the eagle on top of it, the letters underneath it say The Hill. That would have said Southwest Bank at one time, but once BMO bought it, it didn't fit with their branding. But they kept the eagle and they put The Hill underneath it because it was the entrance to the Hill, the Italian section of St. Louis. That's what that refers to. So on the day of the robbery, our two cops are on patrol working the Hill. Looks like we got a little police line here. It says do not cross, but I'll show you where they were parked. They would have been parked right about here, in this area, right near the intersection of Shaw and Kings Highway. Let me explain what's going on inside the bank, as depicted in the movie. Because in the movie, what you are seeing are real scenes inside Southwest Bank. That is not a set. That is the inside of Southwest Bank that you see in the movie. Bowerman enters, says this is a holdup. Everybody freeze. Hands up. The other two conspirators, I keep calling them conspirators, I really don't know what else to call them. The other two, their role in this was to collect the money. Bowerman had the gun. Well, they all were armed, but Bowerman had the gun trained on the bank tellers. So now Frank Vito, who is Bowerman's #2 guy, his trusted lieutenant, he starts collecting the money, putting it in a bag. While the other crook, the inexperienced one, pretty much some mope from Chicago that they picked up for this job, William Scholl, the bartender, he helps out but isn't really participating too much in the action. And outside, parked in front of the bank, is Glenn Chernick, the getaway car driver in the stolen Oldsmobile. Now, Bowerman is ordering the tellers to get on the floor after they turn over the money to Frank Vito. But one of them, as she's getting down onto the floor, she trips a silent alarm. And that alarm rings through to a central monitoring station in downtown St. Louis. Pretty much simultaneously, while that's happening, in a back room that the crooks can't see, our telephone repair guy, Joe Bauer, he sees what's going on in the bank, and he calls the St. Louis Police Department directly. At the same time, all of that is happening. Out in front of the bank, Myrtle Howard, the Salvation Army volunteer who's collecting money for charity in front of the bank. She could easily have run away. She saw them, the crooks, entering the bank with their faces covered with handkerchiefs, carrying guns, and she could easily have run away, but she did not. Myrtle Howard stays exactly where she was, and she stands out in front of the bank, warning people to not go in. Potential customers saying, don't go in there. There's something awful going on inside the bank. So there's really no telling how many lives Myrtle Howard saved that day. As I said, within seconds, the call goes out. And our two police officers who are parked in their car on the corner of Shaw and Kings Highway, they hear it. They are the closest to the scene. Melbourne Stein, great cop name, by the way, Melbourne Stein and Robert Heights. Takes them about a minute to get over the Kings Highway Viaduct to the scene of the crime at Southwest Bank. But Heights and Stein are the first officers on the scene. Heights is able to get inside the bank immediately by using a side entrance. Bricked up now, but Heights is able to get inside the bank. His partner, on the other hand, is out here in front, Stein. Now, Stein is a Marine Corps veteran, and he's pretty calm under fire, and it's going to come in very handy here in a moment, just as I will show you exactly where the players were. This would have been where Myrtle Howard, our Salvation Army volunteer, was. And once police get here, Myrtle scatters. But this here is where Stein would have been. Now, in the crime scene photograph from the Post-Dispatch, you see there was a metal newspaper box that was here. And Stein positions himself right about here. And from this position, he can see inside this door. But he's shielded here. They can't see him. And at this point, none of the robbers know that police are on the scene. They don't know it yet. But that is about to change in a big hurry. The first thing Heights sees when he enters the bank is William Scholl, crouched underneath the bank counter with a gun, ready to shoot the tellers if they didn't comply. And Heights has a clear shot at Scholl, and he takes it. He shoots Scholl in the back. Now Bowerman, who is stationed closer to the entrance on the corner, Bowerman is startled by that shot. He hears it, and he turns around and reflexively, he opens fire on Corporal Heights. And he hits Heights twice, shoots him in the head and in the neck, and Heights is down. Stein, who was a World War II veteran Marine, knows that he can, if necessary, he can use this sheet metal newspaper box as protection, because from here, he can see everything that's going on inside the bank. So if he stands like this, he can see everything that's happening inside. And what he sees inside is his partner down. Now, at about the same time, Frank Vito, the guy described as Bowerman's minion, Frank Vito panics. Vito says, and one of the tellers hears him say this, Vito says, once he realizes that the police are on the scene, Vito says, I'll take 99 years for this one if they catch me. And there's no way they're going to catch me. They're not going to take me alive. And Vito puts a gun to his head and blows his brains out right here inside the bank. And when he does, $141,769 is in the bag that drops at his feet. Blood-spattered money. So we don't have Frank Vito to worry about anymore. Bowerman takes a hostage. A young woman who was in the bank just getting a cashier's check. He takes her hostage and intends to use her as a human shield to get out of the bank. Now, he doesn't know that Melbourne Stein is right here. Now, in the meantime, all around us, more than 100 St. Louis police officers are descending on the bank, so they are arriving little by little. And pretty soon this entire area is going to be filled with police. We don't know where Chernick is, by the way. He sees what's happening. He says, I am out of here. Back to Melbourne Stein right here. He sees Bowerman with the woman. And they get to right about here where this entrance would have been. And Bowerman's plan is to exit the bank with his human shield. Stein is here. As Bowerman walks out the bank, he's got a clear shot. Stein does, has a clear shot at Bowerman. And he takes the shot. And at about 3 feet, if that, I mean from here to here, maybe 3 feet, from that short of distance, he pumps one into the side of Bowerman, and Bowerman falls. Bowerman drops, and his hostage is able to get away. Now, in that crime scene photograph, right about here, you see Bowerman down, and you see his glasses right about here. Again, I cannot say enough for the crime scene photography that went on that day. Now, by then, this area is filled with police, and they all storm the bank. Now, they fire a bunch of tear gas in first, though, because they don't know how many are in there. So they pump the bank full of tear gas, and with gas masks on, they enter the bank. And really what's left inside is one guy, the least experienced crook of them all. His name is William Scholl. We met him earlier. He's the bartender guy. Never had any trouble with the law before, never been on any kind of a bank job. And Scholl, who has been shot but not seriously wounded, is easily taken into custody. And it is right about here that you see that picture of him being arrested. So let's talk about the tail of the tape once the tear gas settles inside here. The tail of the tape, the tail of the carnage. What do we have? Well, we have one crook dead on the floor of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That's Frank Vito. At his feet is a bag of blood-spattered money, $140,769. That was the take. That was the amount they stood to take had they been able to pull this off. Bowerman, still there at the entrance, awaiting an ambulance to take him to City Hospital. Scholl has been taken into custody. We don't know where Chernick is, by the way. In a moment, I will take you to where they find the getaway car abandoned. But Chernick is in the wind. Somehow he makes it home to Chicago. We don't know how that happens. Glenn Chernick gets away, at least temporarily gets away. Heights was also taken to City Hospital. Bowerman was taken to City Hospital. So we got Bowerman at the hospital, Vito is dead, Scholl is at the hospital, Chernick is in the wind, Corporal Heights is at the hospital. 3 people at City Hospital, one of them on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. So naturally, the FBI descends in force on St. Louis City Hospital, and that is where we are going to head for our next location. Well, here we are, City Hospital, St. Louis City Hospital. Pretty cool building on Lafayette, right at the entrance to Lafayette Square, actually, and Soulard over that way. Now, this place stopped being a hospital back in 1985. It has now gone condo. And of course, we always have to have a Walgreens in every story where there's a historic building. And there is our Walgreens. This development, by the way, they tried a supermarket there, a Fresh Fields, I think, supermarket. That failed. They tried a Tim Hortons here. That failed. And, well, here we go with the sirens. Can't have one of these without sirens in it, can I? Well, back to City Hospital, because this is where all of the pieces are going to come together for police and the FBI investigating this intricate crime story that I have been following, the great St. Louis bank robbery. This is where all the pieces are going to come together for that. In this building. Well, all but about 40,000 pieces. 40,000 green pieces. For that part of the story, you are going to have to join me on the next episode of Highway Farty. I won't be gone long, I promise. We'll see you soon. I think. We will see you soon on the next episode of Highway Farty.